What if the memories you can't quite explain aren't accidents, aren't coincidences, and aren't imagination at all, but fragments of a life you've already lived, returning now because you're finally ready to notice them? When they surface, you feel it. A strange ache, a sudden shiver, a pull that makes no logical sense. Science shrugs it off. Logic moves on. But Edgar Cayce spent decades pointing to something far more intimate, far more ancient. The soul quietly remembering itself. And if you're here right now, it may be because those echoes have already begun to reach you. A face that feels instantly familiar. A place you've never visited, yet somehow miss. A fear that seems older than this lifetime. These aren't mistakes. They aren't random. They're signals. And in the next few moments, I'm going to guide you through the signs that suggest your soul may have walked this earth before. Signs you've felt your entire life, even if no one ever gave them meaning. To understand past lives, you have to step beyond the thinking mind and into the deeper memory beneath it. A memory that doesn't live in the brain, but in the soul itself. Cayce taught that reincarnation isn't a belief system. It's the quiet structure of human experience. An invisible thread linking every lifetime into one unfolding journey. Your soul carries every lesson, every wound, every triumph, not as clear images, but as impressions. And those impressions rise to the surface when something in this life touches something from another. That moment of déjà vu that feels too intense to dismiss. The immediate bond with someone you barely know. The ability you never practiced, yet somehow already possess. The fear that makes no sense, yet feels ancient. These are the echoes Cayce described. Echoes that follow the soul across centuries. Echoes that surface when you're ready to remember who you were, so you can understand who you are now. Science studies the brain, but the brain is only the instrument. The soul is the musician. And when that musician has played many lifetimes, the melody becomes layered, familiar, haunting, unmistakable. As you listen, notice what resonates. Not with your thoughts, but with that deeper place inside you that recognizes truth before words arrive. If something stirs within you, it may be because your soul is remembering itself. When you follow that stirring deeper, you begin to realize this isn't a metaphor or poetic idea. It's something Edgar Cayce described again and again in his recorded trance readings. Across thousands of sessions, he spoke of souls returning to Earth repeatedly, carrying forward patterns, unfinished lessons, and the emotional residue of who they once were. I've spent time studying these transcripts, not as rigid doctrine, but as a map of how consciousness evolves across lifetimes. What follows is my interpretation of Cayce's work, shared here on Beyond the Twist. Reincarnation isn't fantasy. It's continuity. It's the soul expressing itself through different bodies, different eras, different circumstances, much like a musician playing different instruments. The form changes. The essence does not. Cayce's readings suggested that the traits you can't explain, the relationships that ignite instantly, and the wounds that feel older than memory all point to a story larger than a single lifetime. They form patterns of consciousness, not to trap you, but to guide you toward growth. And once you begin to recognize those patterns, life stops feeling random and starts feeling remembered. This becomes clearest in the quiet stories of ordinary people whose lives cracked open under the weight of something they couldn't explain. There was a woman who had never left her country, yet carried a vivid image of a narrow stone street overlooking a bay, an image she could describe in perfect detail. It wasn't a dream, not a fantasy, just a memory with no origin in this lifetime. Years later, she traveled with a friend, stepped off a bus in a coastal European town she had never studied, and felt her entire body release. She knew where the streets led. She recognized the view before it appeared. And when she later encountered Cayce's teachings about geographic memory, the soul retaining emotional imprints from places it once lived, everything clicked. What she carried wasn't imagination. It was continuity. And the same may be true for you. Then there was a man who lived his entire life with an overwhelming fear of deep water. No childhood trauma, no near drowning, nothing in his history that explained it. Yet standing near the ocean caused his chest to tighten, as if remembering something his mind couldn't access. After exploring Cayce's work, he allowed himself to consider a possibility he had never entertained, that the fear wasn't from this life at all, but from a life ended by water long ago. As he sat with that idea, not as superstition, but as an echo, the fear began to soften. It didn't vanish, but it became understandable. And understanding is often the first form of freedom. And the same may be true for you. There was also a child, barely 3 years old, who met a family friend for the first time and casually said, "You used to take me to the garden." The adults laughed uncomfortably, but Cayce would have recognized this as soul group memory, the recognition of someone the soul had traveled with before, long before this life began. Children often remember what adults forget. That identity is temporary, but connection endures. And the same may be true for you. So let me ask you something gently. Why do certain places feel familiar the moment you arrive, even when you've never been there before? Why do some people feel like home instantly, while others remain distant no matter how long you know them? Why do certain fears feel ancient, as if carved into you before you were born? Cayce believed these moments aren't coincidences. They're memories rising from beneath the surface, the soul whispering what the mind has forgotten. And if you're honest, you felt those whispers too. A pull, a recognition, a knowing without logic. That isn't imagination. That's remembrance. Your soul carries more history, love, and experience than a single lifetime could ever contain. And whether you consciously realize it or not, part of you already knows. Your story didn't begin here. It's continuing. When you begin to organize these experiences, the patterns become difficult to ignore. Cayce often said the soul leaves fingerprints across lifetimes, subtle, consistent, deeply personal. The first indicator is what he called emotional echoes, unexplained fears, talents, or reactions with no clear origin in your current life. A sudden panic near water, a natural skill you never trained for, a grief or joy that appears without cause. These are emotional remnants carried forward. The second indicator is soul recognition. Those moments when you meet someone and feel an immediate bond, or an equally strong aversion. According to Cayce, these reactions stem from connections formed long before this lifetime, relationships woven across incarnations. The third is timeline residue, memories, dreams, or images that feel too real to dismiss. Fragments of scenes, places, or identities that don't belong to your present story, yet live vividly within you. Within these indicators lie deeper structures, karmic imprints shaping your challenges, soul group patterns guiding who enters your life, repeating themes revealing what your soul is still learning. When you see these structures clearly, past lives stop feeling mythical and start feeling familiar. And this is where the truth opens fully. Science can map the brain, but it can't measure the part of you that remembers what the brain has never learned. Cayce wasn't describing fantasy. He was describing continuity, the ongoing journey of a soul that has lived, loved, lost, and evolved across ages. You aren't just a person with instincts. You're a being with history. What you call intuition is often memories surfacing quietly. The return of something you already knew in another time, another body, another chapter of the same consciousness. Past lives aren't about who you were. They're about understanding why you respond the way you do now. Why certain paths open effortlessly. Why certain wounds feel ancient. Why certain loves feel eternal. If Edgar Cayce were sitting across from you, he would say it simply. You have lived before, and every lifetime has led you to this one. And once you feel that truth, even briefly, you never see yourself the same way again. If you're still here, feeling that quiet stirring inside, honor it. If this awakens something in you, acknowledge it. If your soul recognized even a fragment of this truth, share it with someone who has always felt older than their years, someone who carries wisdom they can't explain. These gestures aren't just engagement. They're recognition, a way of saying, I know there's more to me than this lifetime. Let this be your way of listening to what your soul has been trying to return to you. As you take a breath and settle back into yourself, remember this. Your soul's journey is ancient, intentional, and deeply intricate. You are not new. You are returning, gathering the fragments of who you've been so you can become who you're meant to be. Nothing you've ever felt has been random. The longings, the déjà vu, the unexplained wisdom, the wounds that feel older than your body. They're all part of a tapestry woven across lifetimes. Every incarnation has carried you toward greater understanding, deeper compassion, and clearer truth. And whether you realize it or not, you are still unfolding. This is Beyond the Twist, where hidden memories rise and the soul remembers its path.